Russia has long been fighting to take the eastern city of Pokrovsk, a Ukrainian military hub close to Russian-held Donetsk. Russia's latest advances in the area are threatening to overtake Ukraine's recent successful invasion of Russian territory. In early August, Ukraine seized the Russian city of Sudzha and about 1,200 square kilometers of nearby territory. But the strategic move has failed to divert Russian troops pushing toward Pokrovsk. In recent days, or weeks, I should say, they have come within 10 kilometers of the city. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has described the situation there as extremely difficult. Let's get more on this with Domitilla Sagramoso, senior lecturer and military analyst at King's College London. She joins us from Warsaw. Domitilla, simply put, why is this particular city, Pokrovsk, so important for Russian forces?
This city is particularly important because it is, in a way, a logistic hub. It is an intersection. In this city, there's an intersection of rail and roads that lead to areas that are very important strategically for Ukraine. It opens potentially the road towards Konstantinovka, Slavyansk, Kramatorsk, and it makes it very hard now for Ukraine to supply these areas, which they still control in the area, what is Donetsk Oblast. And which has always been sort of the key stronghold of the Ukrainian armed forces ever since instability and war has broken out in the Donbass in 2014. So these really are very important areas. And also what is important to highlight is that the defensive lines behind Pokrovsk are not so strong. So there is concern that then Russian forces could advance more rapidly once they move beyond Pokrovsk. So the question of defensive lines and support in this area is particularly critical.
Many in Ukraine hope that the incursion into Russia's Kursk could divert Russia's military resources. Is there any indication of that happening?
There is some indication. Of course, what would have been an ideal situation would have been that Russia diverts forces from these areas which were under strong pressure in the Donetsk Oblast. But most of the forces that were diverted were from other areas around Kharkiv, around Kherson, and then they have mobilized troops from inside Russia. Marines, VDV forces, special forces, conscripts, reserves. So they haven't really found that it was really necessary to move. They have sort of risked not moving forces from the Donbass, and this has created problems now also for the Ukrainians. So I think that in some respects it hasn't really worked. It has worked to a certain extent because there's been less pressure, for example, on Chasiv Yar, which was under strong pressure before this incursion. So the picture is a bit mixed. Of course, now the focus is in this area, and it seems that the Ukrainians are now sending very important reinforcement to this area. But, I think this was a news that we heard this morning, and we need confirmation as to whether these National Guards that were sent to the area are going to be effective enough.
Domitilla, less than a minute, but I do want to ask you, at this point, what does Ukraine need to do to improve its situation on the front line?
Well, I think it needs quite a few. It needs, of course, more ammunition, more support in terms of military equipment. It needs to be able to hit Russian forces further afield, especially, as we know, the airfields, which are also important on the battlefield. There's a lot of talk about, missiles being shot by planes throughout Ukraine, but also that's relevant in the battlefield. The so-called glided bombs are very effective. Ukraine also would need to build more effective defensive lines. There's been a lot of talk that the problems in this area of Pokrovsk also relate to bad leadership, to lack of proper rotation.
Right.
And this is a combination when there is limited ammunition, when there is limited sort of support also in terms of forces, it sort of creates a lot of strains in the area. So I think if we find that there is more support, then things could potentially turn around.
Okay, that's Domitilla Sagramoso, senior lecturer and military analyst at King's College London. Many thanks.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, more than half of Pokrovsk's 60,000 residents have either been evacuated or have fled the city. DW's team visited the city on the front line to see how evacuations and defense preparations are going.
The front line is rapidly approaching Pokrovsk. Fighting is underway less than 10 kilometers from here. People are leaving the city en masse. Authorities are urging people to hurry. The last train will depart on September 11. For 85-year-old Domitilla Sagramoso, this is her second experience of war. She still remembers the German Nazi occupation.
I was only 3 years old, but I remember everything as if it were now. How they led us to the station. Germans on one side, dogs on the other, so no one could escape, like in the movies. They loaded us into a cattle car and wanted to take us to a concentration camp. Then the partisans destroyed the railway and shouted, "Run, wherever you can."
Residents are now leaving for safer cities where they'll stay with friends, family, or in state-provided housing.
There are significantly fewer people in Pokrovsk now. Many have been evacuated. At least 300 people leave daily, some on their own, or with assistance for those who need help.
The White Angels are helping people evacuate from hard-hit areas, but not everyone is willing to leave despite the danger.
My mother left, my son left. I don't want to go anywhere. You know, being in a foreign land is foreign. We're not needed anywhere. I've worked abroad. I know we're not needed anywhere.
Of course, it's hard to leave your home. People have built their lives here. But the fear of leaving is greater than the fear of death. I can say people are more afraid to leave than to die in their homes.
Pokrovsk is turning from a once safe city into a frontline town. Supermarkets and banks have closed. Produce and clothes can still be bought at street markets or small shops. This beauty salon is still giving haircuts.
We can still live for now. If it gets worse, we'll leave.
Nearby, Ukrainian troops are preparing for a prolonged defense of Pokrovsk. New recruits will soon head to the front.
There are a lot of drones, a lot of airstrikes. Enemy tanks and artillery are firing at our positions. They have not advanced on our line. We're holding it, and we're not letting the enemy get closer.
While Ukraine pushes on with its invasion of Russia's Kursk region, this company is still waiting for reinforcements.
Kursk is fine, but we shouldn't forget about Pokrovsk. We also need people here. The current situation demands more ammunition and drones. After all, this is our homeland, while Kursk is the aggressor's territory.